to another hour of power talking about watches, of course. I was inspired yesterday. We were going over the Markwell watch, and it made me realize that I have watches in my collection that are vintage inspired. In fact, I realized, much like you guys, you probably organize your watches in some fashion, especially if you have more than one. If you have a watch box, if you have two or three watch boxes like me, you probably have them organized in a certain way where they make sense. They kind of coincide with each other. And I was actually going to redo my watch box because what I realized is I have a few watches that are vintage inspired, in fact. And I want to let you guys know there are a couple things that I want to go over with the Markwell watches again. There's just a couple. I realized I watched my playback of my live yesterday, as I often do, because I want to get better. And I realized that I left out a couple of things that the owner was actually saying inside the live that I want to show you guys, and I felt it was pretty important. I'm going to let a few people walk in. I want to do my good morning to you guys. And I have, of course, with me a few watch options that you guys could go for vintage inspiration if you're looking for that. Some of the watches that I have here, you probably already own because I was very impressionable in the beginning of collecting, and watching all the reviews swayed me. You know, I thought it was a good thing though. And here's why I say that. I searched for more of a cult classic type of watches that were super popular, because I felt more comfortable if the masses were going after a watch. That formula doesn't work every single time. And as we know, as we progress and mature as collectors, we have to find what works just for us. But for a person that doesn't have too much knowledge in watches at the time, I felt more comfortable going with what was called a cult classic, or something that is of high value. And I did choose some watches that were actually a home run, and I still appreciate to this day, especially the SKX 009. I know I bring that watch up a lot, but I'm so happy that I pulled the trigger on that watch before the price hike went too crazy. It was at the time where the price was already getting inflated. I believe the watch started off, I think, at $200. At the year that I purchased it, it made sense for it to be around the $300 mark for inflation. Because remember, the SKX was out for about 20, 30 years now. And it would make sense that that price is going to rise. But it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to pay for a $1,000 used watch. The watch is still a cult classic, and it still has a following. So if it's worth it for you, I get it. I understand if you have the money to spend on it, go for it. But I was happy that I got it around, I believe, the $4 and change and $500 mark. But anyway, let me say good morning to those who trickled in. My man, Thelonious Monk, is in the building. Good morning, sir. Paul W., good morning. Skylar popping with the streams for a bit. Yeah, so I'm on vacation, brother man. So I'm taking full advantage to go live and put the content out there. Here's the deal. Even when I'm not on my own live, and I realized this just yesterday, I was on Travis's live towards the back end of it. Man, it's so comfortable and it's so fun to get into a live, because I know the community of people that are in the live. When we go and we venture off, we go to a week-to-week basis, or in other cases on Traps Live, it's a day-to-day basis. But you guys become familiar, man. You guys become friends. You guys become a family. So even when I'm not going live, I really enjoy it. So coming live on my own channel, I have a lot of fun doing this, even though it feels, the camera's on you, and it's lights, camera, action, but I have a lot of fun. Now, another thing that I realized I made a mistake for on the last live is I should have flipped the camera around when I showed you guys the watches. We're always looking to improve and get better. That's the reason why I watch the replays of my own lives. I make myself laugh sometimes. So I was giggling on the couch. The wife looked over to me. She saw I was watching my own live. I'm like, yeah, I just made myself laugh. But anyway, what's going on, Lucas? Good morning. I want to go over some of the things. So, guys, double wristing again, gang, you know. I love double wristing, man. I just do. It's a mood. There's no reason or rhyme behind it. If somebody asks, why are you wearing two watches? I go, you want the short answer or you want the long answer? The short answer is, I just enjoy it. It's not a flex. I know I look mad, but I don't care, man. I really don't care what people think, honestly. And if it brings enjoyment to me, then it brings enjoyment to me. And it also helps me cycle through my collection a lot easier. I have 50 plus watches, right? So double wristing cuts it down to 25 in my crazy mind. So that's the reason why. But anyway, we have the Markwell watch, of course, on wrist. This has to be definitely stress test. It has to be field tested. I got to get the true nature and essence of the watch before I can do a educated watch review. And then on the left hand, we have the pole router, right? The pole router that I built. Now, in some of the watches that I'm going to show you here today, we're going to include, what is it, two watches that I built, right? These lives, this content is basically a watch nerd showing other watch nerds on how I like to collect, with some added value and some tips and tricks along the ways. But I haven't been collecting for like a decade's time. It's been about 5 or 6 years-ish. So what I know is what I know, and what I don't, we have to do homework on. But anyway, you guys helped me out a lot with that. And I want to show you guys what I missed yesterday for the Markwell watch. And the owner actually, or the co-owner, actually was saying it in chat, and that's the reason why I love watching my playback. So one of the things that I didn't shout out, I know I mentioned the second hand extending all the way out to the outer side of the dial, which I love, but he also color matched the end tip to it. So that's something that I wanted to mention and make sure you guys understand. So here's the deal. Here's the idea. If you want to wrap your mind around it, if you're going for a watch like this, right? This is a watch made by another nerd, another enthusiast that is in tune with what we want out of watches, right? And how do we know this? Well, another thing that I missed here on the date aperture is that the date wheel actually matches the color of the dial. Very, very important. And another thing that I love how it kind of cross intersects into the center of the dial, and it also intersects into the outer, which are two different colors. But I think it was done very nice in the shape that it is in, and it is cross-sectoring them. So it gives kind of like that depth that you wouldn't get from it. And we are trimmed out with that PVD coating as well, right? So that could have easily just went to stainless steel, which wouldn't have stand out as much. But I think it stands out a lot better and a lot nicer being wrapped around that gold kind of PVD look to it, matching all of the indices, of course, matching the case itself. Here's the signed crown. I'll show you guys this over again because this is a better view. Again, I forgot to flip my camera over, which is a better camera from this angle. Here is the lume on the crown, which is very nice. The case back, you can gauge the thickness of it. Of course, I mentioned that we have quick release lugs and everything else, but everything is done very well. It has nice, sharp, turns to it. The lugs look very, very nice. It's in the shape of that old classic style. So what you're getting at this level, right? You're getting that Swiss movement that we all get nerdy about down the road, right? A bunch of us go with a bunch of NH35s, what we're happy with. Lone Ranger, what's going on, brother? And we eventually evolve into wanting more minor details that for us make a bigger difference. And I think that date wheel aperture is one. For sure, the quick release on the leather. But by the way, guys, I know I said that this leather strap is supple, but I think I underrated. I should have expressed more so that how this leather is super duper supple, guys. It's really impressive out of the box, okay? So I want to give it its flowers. But the date wheel aperture, color matching on that second hand, also has an arrow tip leading all the way out to the edge. Those are the things that I missed on the other live segment, so I wanted to make sure to include that. I am fully enjoying wristing this already. It feels good on wrist. It curves to the wrist very, very nice. It is the reason why that this video is showing up as a sponsor, because technically this watch is on loan. For me, whether the watch is gifted or loaned, I put the sponsorship because in some way or fashion, I was given something to produce something, yeah? And I don't know the finer lines in between, the regulations and everything else. So, it is what it is. John and Alan are local to me. I've gotten a lot of hands-on time with the Datematic. Looking forward to your review of it. Absolutely, Paul, and good, man. I hope that you're able to digest the review video that I'm going to do from it. I'm going to try to do my best to find all the greater details in it and cover it. I'm glad you have some experience with it. You can contest that this is an awesome watch, and I'm pretty stoked about it, and I love the details on that. So as far as the theme goes to this live, let me crack the windows a little bit. Yesterday, guys, I was doing this live, and it started getting hot in here. I don't know if you caught it. I was like wiping sweat off my forehead. You know what? Let me close this one because this one's a little loud. All right, that's better. So on theme of vintage watches, there's many different routes that we can go. I am not, as I said in the past, versatile in actual vintage watches. My specialty is more in getting vintage inspiration, whether it be a one for one or whether it be a design language on its own, or just taking inspiration and not necessarily being a clomage, being more of a homage, which is what we get from the Markwell watch executed correctly. That is a price difference of some of the watches that we can and we do have here today. So that's effectively $656.99. I think that John mentioned that that price is good till the end of the year. So if you happen to be heavily interested in it, consider it. Well, we only have a couple. We only have a couple of days, so you got to consider it quickly. But it's a perfect watch, and for the price versus what you're getting out of the watch, you're getting a Swiss Movement SW Salida 200-1. Worth it to have all the finer details that we always look for in a watch. Yes, is that fair? Moving on to this vintage inspired watch. Now, a lot of you are going to be familiar with it. I've done a review. Did I do a review of it? No, I think I just did the video of me building it. So this Mamma Jamma here is what we call the pole router clomage, right? Not so much heavily a clomage because I did my own thing on the dial in that I chose this salmon dial. I really needed like a pink kind of color, or rather I should say I wanted a pink colorway dial to it. Noctua Watches, good morning, sir. So it is with my own little spin on it. I think that I was worried that having all of these details in the dial was going to be a little bit too heavy. It having this chapter ring that resembles the pole router the most. The crown on this is a little bit small, okay? I will say that. Like, my fingers don't feel great setting the time on here and everything else. I can live with that for just one watch, right? I'm setting the time, I go throughout my day, and then I don't have to set it again until I cycle through my collection, which could be weeks, which could be months, depending on the nature of the beast. But clomage, homage, whatever you want to call it, for me, it is more so of a homage, only because I did go with a dial that I don't think is common with the actual pole router. I may be wrong, but I absolutely love it. Now, it's not a pie pan, even though it kind of looks that way. I had somebody ask me that before in the past. It's not an actual pie pan. It's just the way that it's outlined and sectored off and everything else. We have an applied logo here. We have some lume on the hands, even though it is a dress watch, much like the Markwell watch that I told you guys that had the lume. I'm okay with it. I actually prefer it. I could have gone with no lume on this watch, but I don't mind a little lume on there, you know? And I did change the second hand a little bit. The balance has a little bit of lume just to let us know that the watch is running at night, which it should be anyway. But this was done very, very well. Now, this is by Namoki Mods. This is one of their newer cases. I did a video with me actually doing a step-by-step build, in case you are interested in building your own vintage watch, which is a thing. Of course, Jubilee J-style bracelet, J-style bracelet, okay? We have the J-style bracelet on here. Now, that's not gonna have any quick adjustment, right, for the diver. It's gonna be tooled, which is fine. The clasp, now, I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret, and I don't have the bracelet here today with the floose, but one thing that I noticed on the floose is that this piece here was a little loose on the floose. It's a little loose on the floose. And the reason why, and I'm just giving you guys this because I want you to look out for it. You see this little notch here that catches into this hole that keeps this click down? It doesn't have that. And I never even paid any attention to that. Now, I will say this, it doesn't completely open. It could snag on some piece of clothing, not on this one, but on the actual floose. And again, I don't have the bracelet on me, but in my review video, I'll mention it. And that makes the difference for the clasp when you have that security clasp part on there. Okay, so there goes the Namoki branding. You can match this watch up, obviously, with this J-style bracelet. There are other bracelets that you can pair with it. I'll show you the other options that you can go with. But I was happy with this, and I went with a black date wheel. I requested for them to send me an NH model that had a black date wheel because I felt like it would match the black over there and be less of an eyesore if it was white. So on theme with some of the things that we request from micro brands, or some of the things that we're nerdy about. Now, the thing about colored date wheels is this. Of course, it's nice to match the dial with the colorway, but it's not always a smart move, if you will. So if the color that it's matching actually makes it harder to read the numbers, then it's not a smart move. Therefore, you should go with a color that maybe complements it instead of matches it. If you can match it, match it. If not, these are my opinions. Just get something that pairs with it very, very nice. Make sure the mic's good. That pairs with it very, very nice. And if not, like I said, like I went with a black date wheel, right? And I felt like that paired with the dial instead of it matching with the pink, which I feel like if it was pink and white, it would be a little hard to read. And I could probably find a date wheel that is pink and white. Maybe I want to do a test on that just to see if I'm accurate, but I have seen watches that were harder to read. I don't like Cyclops on my watches. I don't know about you guys. There's never a case where I feel like the Cyclops is a plus for me, so I never do that. Maybe when my eyesight gets a little bit worse, which without glasses it is, I will want that Cyclops, but as of now, I can see it with the spectacles on, so I'm happy with that. So this is another option that you guys can go with, and I'm showing you this first, but when I go through the other watches, it's gonna be in price organization. And you can build something, if you are ready to venture into building your own watch and you need a vintage watch in your collection, what better way to step into that option than building your own watch from Namoki? And I can say this, all of their parts that I have experienced have not failed. All of their parts have been nicely finished, and I think that they give you everything that you need aside from just the glue that you would need to adhere to the stem to the crown, right? For some reason, they don't add that. It's very affordable to get your own. So if you are gonna make a move on that, just keep that in mind. Make your purchase on AliExpress or better yet, do Amazon so you get it quicker. And always glue that crown to the stem. For me, some people say it isn't necessary. It is necessary. For me, it's always necessary because the last thing you want to do is unscrew that. It falls off when you don't notice it, and then it's kaput, right? So that's my thing. If you want to build a vintage watch, you can have that option. But if you say, Skylar, I'm not a watch builder, I never will be, I'm not interested in that, that's okay because I got options for you as well. And we went from higher, right, price-wise, right? I think that the value is justified. I said that the watch, I think on live was like $700, $800, but it's on sale right now for that price that I told you before. So it definitely is worth it in my opinion. Now, where can we go to get a vintage inspiration, right? Chronograph, mechanical, everything of the like. Well, you guys probably know where I'm going with this. 1963, right? 1963. I've shown this watch a lot of times. I have this on the Zero Pass so I can appreciate the actual movement on here. AliExpress, $170, sub $200 for sure. Be careful when you're trying to look for something like this. This is more of a homage. If you go to actual C-Go and you get an official one, it's going to be much higher in price. I think they float around $400 or $500. If that's worth it from you to get it from the source, go for it. I'm okay with their homage, clomage at this point version of it. And what I did is I went with a version of it that's not so typical. So we have a cream dial on here. The second hand for the chronograph is an actual star. So there are a little bit design language differences between it, but of course we still get to appreciate that beautiful mechanical chrono movement behind there. And again, I've said this before, but it's worth saying again, Seagull movements are going to be a lot less available. So if you were thinking about pulling the trigger on this watch, which a lot of people own this watch, and I got this watch early on because of that reason, right? I wanted to play it safe. I knew nothing about a chronograph that had a mechanical movement in it. I wanted to get something that was super affordable so I could play around with it and not worry about if I break it, I'm out like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And we spoke about that before with Homage and Clomage and Tandorio of the like, or any of those companies being a good option for a mechanical movement where you can play around and not have to worry about damaging. And this is another example of it being a chronograph, right? Some of them, okay, so one of the biggest things with a chronograph mechanical, if you're not familiar with it, you don't want to take it in the water, even if it's 100 meters of water resistance. For me, it's a no-go because the moment you press this pusher in, you compromise the movement seal. Water can get in it as it like reflexes back, or when you push it in even. So that's one of the things that I can say for it if you're new to mechanical watches in general and water resistance, and specifically with chronographs. But other than that, this looks like pretty much a one-for-one. It does have blued hands. It has the little star at the second hand, and it is cream dial. Sapphire crystal. I believe it also is a sapphire sandwich, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have this running. I have it on a zero pass strap. This way I can always appreciate that movement whenever I want to. That's from the Anachronist store, if you guys are wondering. I feel like his leather straps are the most supple, and I think it pairs very well with this vintage type of vibe. So also another watch that you can consider if you want a chronograph vintage watch. Excellent choice, very affordable. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Minkana Mike, good morning. So from there, right, where do we go? What do we see? Let me get some water. And let me know, guys, where did you guys start off with your vintage inspiration? Did you go straight to vintage? Is that your niche, or do you have watches like how I do, where either you build it or you buy something affordable that has vintage inspiration with modern technology? I love saying that, because that's my favorite place to be. And there are some companies that I don't have here that we can mention. That's another thing too. Thelonious, The Source, Noctua, The Source, Lone Ranger. I got some powerful minds here. Give me some micro brands that you guys know that I've never mentioned, maybe, that are doing vintage inspiration in a very high caliber way. Now, we know Baltic, we know Laurier. I gotta get me a Laurier. I think I want a Laurier before a Baltic. No disrespect to Baltic. It could be probably the price thing that I'm really looking after, but I love Laurier. I love the owners. They're very, very nice, and they make very nice timepieces. So I definitely probably will put both watches in my collection. We know those names. Eugene from Maryland, he has his own Estral, I don't know how to say his name, but he makes watches in a higher caliber of movement and finishing to vintage watches as well. He makes small batches, small runs, so that also makes it kind of special, where it's not a mass-produced thing like this 1963, right, Siegel. So if you have that on wrist, and I've seen that watch come up on Watch Crunch, the wrist checks, and his watches are beautiful. He's on my radar as well. I know that there's probably a plethora of different independent or micro brands that also produce watches of the like. So if you guys know a name that I should be looking out for this kind of subject, let me know, because I am taking 365 days, maybe shy about a month or two, because October is when I'm probably going to snipe me my next watch. But I'm leaving a lot of time in between to do some homework and really see what's out there. You know, as I get more watches in my collection, as I get more mature as a collector, I want to put more research and development into watches going into my collection to make a more sound choice and opinion on things. So the next watch, I went straight to vintage. Nice, Paul. My second watch was an old Omega dress watch from the 1970s. Wow, bought it back in 2022 when I got into watches. Excellent, man, and that's awesome. So let me ask you this, Paul. What was your first move when you said, okay, I love vintage watches? Was it a relationship with an AD? Was it gaining knowledge on your own? How did you build a relationship where you trust where you were purchasing that watch from to not be a Frankenstein, to actually be true to when it was last serviced? And give us something that is not like, so those are things that I can fire off without being a vintage collector, like an actual vintage collector. But give us another thing to look out for that maybe is not so obvious when you're into vintage watches. I love to share that kind of advice for the people that are programming in and looking for value. Eugene is a badass with his watches. Definitely, bro. Not only is he a badass with his watches, but he's a super cool guy, man. I spent a lot of time with him in the Philly show. He was one of the few people that were there. I spent about 2 hours, not just with him, but in the show, and I spent a lot of time talking to him, and he knows his stuff. He gave me some insider's look to watchmaking, right? Because if you guys don't know, he's a part of Maryland that does a lot of servicing other independent brands, right? They go to him when they have a watch that they need to be serviced or built. So he has some stripes, and he has some credibility, if you will. Yes, that is the name, Lone Ranger. E. Strothleman watch. Look at the chat if you want to know the name. Don't listen to how, when it comes to buying vintage, it's all about doing research. Absolutely. knowing what to look for, knowing what questions to ask, and knowing what to avoid a fake and a Frankenstein watch. So yes, those were the things that were most obvious to me. Those are great things to absolutely give as gems when somebody's interested in vintage watches. But give me some details on what it's, you said it's all about doing research and knowing what to look for. What are some of the things that people should look for? And is building a relationship with a specific AD, a face-to-face, a thing, right? I know buying the seller when it comes to vintage is a thing. We often talk about that. But is there any, that's already a gem, but are there any hidden gems that you can give us specifically? Just trying to pick your mind. As you write that, we'll move on to the next watch, which I have right here. We all know, you guys could probably tell what watch is this from here. Okay, that's how well known this watch is. And we all call it a name that's not even the official name, but I think we'll always be married to this watch no matter how many versions of it. The Orient Bambino. Why'd I roll my tongue? I don't know. For fun. The Orient Bambino, baby. Hello. Who doesn't know this watch? Super cult classic following, legendary status in my opinion when it comes to affordability. And I'll check my notes real quick because I did want to mention pricing as we went along. I believe this version 2. Now keep in mind there's so many different renditions. I think they're up to version 7 now. They even have a small there's many different Bambinos that you can go after. Okay, if you're just starting your watch collection off and you happen to find this channel, I want to feature everything that you can go after starting your collection. This is where a lot of people start to get that vintage inspiration whilst having a reliable movement from a reliable company and doing the watch well. Now, what we can see in contrast to the, let's say, the Markwell watch, right? We already see that the date wheel aperture on this, I got to take it off my wrist. Hold on, guys. Give me a second. Intermission. Booyah. So the date wheel aperture on this, right? I already showed it to you guys. Look at how well it's finished. Look at how it is trimmed in the same coat. There's many things. Date wheel matches and color, yada, yada, yada. Going to something more affordable, which, listen, no shade, right? If you want to step into something that's mechanical, right? This is mechanical. We could give it a wind. The date wheel happens to match pretty well, right? This is actually a white, and this is more of a little bit of a cream dial, so you can't tell the difference too much. So not that big of a deal, but it doesn't have that finishing that it has, which somebody might be okay with, right? For me, if it had trimming on this that was like rose gold, that would hide this aperture even more so by kind of matching the applied, these are applied indices, yes, on the applied indices. So here you go, a super affordable watch. This one is around $210, $250, depending on where you're sourcing it from on the version 2, and you're still getting a lot of good things. This movement is super reliable. I don't believe, no display case back on here, but that's okay. The crown is a very good size. It's right at that size where it's just big enough where it's not too much. It flares out a little bit, has good finishing on it, so no problem doing the keyless work function on here. But a super popular watch where people begin their journey. And I feel that this is probably a good move from you if you're looking to have that kind of ordeal. So let me catch up. My man Paul is trying to hook us up with some info. When it comes to buying, it is really all about the seller. Okay, so there you go, guys. Confirmed by a guy who actually collects vintage watches. Buying the seller. Trust is everything, not just from B2B to these watch sellers, right? But even from B2C where you're buying and you want to form a relationship with the person. You want to check what their history is, right? Google reviews, word of mouth. If you know some people that are collectors, whether it's friends, family, or talk to enthusiasts like how we do here, hey, do you have somebody? Can you point me in the right direction? People are happy to share and to help people out because they understand how it could be. So guys, the first thing out of Paul's text is when it comes to buying, it's really about buying the seller. And I couldn't stress that any more than any other point. That will go a long way and salvage a lot of issues prior to everything else. I bought a SMP. I know what an SMP stands for. You draw blanks when it's live, baby. I'm just saying. 300. It'll come to me. Japan in February. I asked a lot of questions. Can I see it running? Can I see measurements? Can I see measurements? Okay, when was it last serviced? Yes, and they answered all of them. Of course, and listen, if they're selling you the watch, they should be answering all of those questions. They should be happy to answer all of those questions and build that security within you. And as far as he wants to see the watch running, I would even venture to say, hey, can you throw this on a time graph? I don't imagine that there's any AD out there that is selling vintage watches that don't own a time graph that they can pull out real quick, or they even have somewhere where they're displaying the watches. Have them put it on a time graph. Definitely ask when it was last serviced. Now, keep in mind, and they'll probably educate you on this, depending on how old the watch is, even if it's just been serviced, it may not be able to perform like if it was brand new, which is okay. There are tolerances, and the tolerances are much larger when it comes to an older watch. So I would even add to that, and that's probably what you meant by seeing the watch run, because watching the secondhand go around the dial doesn't tell the full story, right? What really tells the full story is the beat error and all the other measurements within the watch that you can't see with the naked eye. So do yourself a favor, put it on a time grapher, get those readings, and really digest what you're getting. I did the same with a US seller for a Planet Ocean in June. And he sent me a video measurements. Okay. History of the watch, etc. Okay, even the history of the watch, I love that as well, right? History of the watch, you're probably talking about not the actual history of the watch, but what were the owners prior, right? And how did they function with the watch? And just so you guys know, back in the day, the older the watch is, when watchmakers used to do services in them, they would mark the inside of the watch, right? Normally, it would be the inside of the case, right? So you know how we look at the case back, the other side of it, and they'll mark when they did the service, who did it, maybe their last name. I'm not entirely sure exactly how much information, but there are indicators to show that the watch has been serviced. So if somebody said, hey, it's been serviced 5 times, and you go in the back of that case and it actually shows 5 markings on it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's always going to be a marking, and therefore you shouldn't buy the watch if they say 5 and you see 2 marks, right? I'm just giving you guys a little bit of my insight and my limited knowledge on vintage watches. When shopping via eBay, there are hot spots where a lot of Franken watches come from. India, Pakistan, and Kazakhstan are places where I've seen a lot of fakes and Frankensteins come from. I'll be honest with you, and I know eBay has some kind of verification program and this, and that, and third. I would not ever, unless I know the seller's store on eBay personally, be comfortable with purchasing a vintage watch from eBay. In my opinion, maybe I'm talking out of a different perspective, and I definitely am, but that's just my paranoia. I just don't trust it because, like you just mentioned, the Frankenstein thing is really like, you have to have a trained eye and you have to have that relationship from a watchmaker to confirm whether or not a part is actually original, right? And that is the whole purpose, in my opinion, if you're going actually for a vintage watch, to have the original parts on there, because the mechanical movements are not like how they were mass produced now. They were made to stay. They were made to last. That is the nostalgia. That is the appreciation. That is the magic of vintage watches to be connected to. So you do want everything to be original from the watch, or you want, if a part was replaced because it was damaged, be replaced from the manufacturer directly. That's my only opinion on it. I would probably personally, unless I was going after a watch that's just very, very difficult to source, I would want everything to be from factory from the day it came out. I wouldn't even want a part changed from it that was changed from the actual manufacturer of the watch, personally. But then again, if I'm looking for a specific watch and I have no luck for years, I might say that that's okay, that's acceptable. What you don't want is a movement to not even be the correct movement for the watch. That happens. Or what's even harder to tell is they switch out a couple of pieces, right? And that's what puts my fear into it. I'm a little lazy maybe too, and I'm not really ready for an actual vintage watch, you know, and that's okay. If you like to collect that way, I actually have a lot more respect for you, knowing the homework that goes behind that, and I think that that's pretty awesome. By video he means time grapher. YouTube has a character limit. Gotcha. So I'm chopping them. That's okay. That's okay. I get what you mean. And I did mention the time grapher. So I did believe that you meant that the measurements were actually the reading of the watch, not the diameter and everything else. You probably know that beforehand if you're searching for a particular. Wristful Ignorance is in the building. What's up, brother, man? How are you? Not now better way. No, I guess you meant no better way to enjoy unloading my truck. Great to be careful, man. Unloading a truck is a dangerous sport. I've done some deliveries on a flatbed and having to do unloads on a trailer of the like. I've been in that atmosphere, so please have me in your headphones and don't look at the screen if you're unloading a truck, my man. We don't need you to get injured at all. eBay is certainly a mixed bag. Exactly. I've had good luck, but I've spent years figuring out what to look for. Okay, so that's fair enough. You don't just jump on eBay and start firing off orders. You've done your homework. You know how to weed through the crap, and that takes time. That's a skill, right? Buying vintage is a skill, I might add. So that's some good advice, man. Please don't jump on eBay and just purchase anything. With vintage, the older the watch, the less likely that it is still how I left the factory watchmaker. Yeah, of course, of course. The older the watch, the less likely it's going to be factory from the actual place, and that's fine. I can understand people giving it some grace when it comes to it. Again, the main thing is, and I believe you would agree, is you don't want a Frankenstein situation. You don't want something that is not accurate to that movement. You know, sometimes they replace the movement overall. So those are the things to look after. But going back to the Bambino, super classy, man. I put this on an ostrich leather. This was the first time that I didn't even know ostrich leather was a thing. Is it actual ostrich leather? Probably not. I got this from AliExpress. And I made it a little fancy with this little class that you can you can purchase this separately as well. I made the justification to say that, well, I'm weathering or I'm using the leather a little less by this kind of class. But, you know, the strap that it comes with, and this is a weird size, by the way, this leather strap. This is, I believe, a 21. So it is a little annoying. The original one that it comes with is like a crocodile dark chocolate color. I wasn't feeling that. I feel like I wanted to liven the color up on this ostrich. This ostrich gives a different feel, whether or not it's actually true ostrich. Is there quick release? Oh, see that? Your boy was following the same rules. Matter of fact, I think I bought this strap a little bit after, so I was privy to the quick release situation. But as you guys can see, 21 millimeters here. It says genuine leather. Okay. 21 millimeters on this leather strap. So that is one thing to look after if you are going for the Orient Bambino. Most of your 20s and your 22s obviously are not going to fit. So, you know, maybe with the purchase you want to get ahead of the game unless you like the leather that it comes with. But a solid choice stepping into the vintage Inspire game. Completely reliable movement. They do their movements in-house. They are a fantastic company. I feel like Orient should be talked about more so in the space of us collectors. They make fantastic divers as well. Them being owned by the Epson Group, which is Seiko, but are running independently, right? So great place to start off. So we went from 175 roughly, 175, 200. This one is, I believe, 2 and change. Let's check the notes. Yeah, so this one's about 2 and change for the version 2. They have one with a small second hand that is about $280, $300. It does start upscaling as you get the later iterations, so keep that in mind. But if you're interested in a nice segue into vintage Inspire watches, the Orient Bambino, and we're calling it the Bambino until forever. So I got another watch that I feel gives me a vintage vibe, and I like the placement of the date wheel aperture on this. It definitely gives me inspiration from the Alpinist. So I want to show you guys this, and I've done a review on this. This is the Zezimi, okay? Zezimi screw down crown on here, which is nice. You can see that diamond shaped crown. That also makes me feel a little vintagey, if you will. And then just the way that everything is made up entirely. Of course, we have the cathedral hands, which also personally gives me a little vintage vibe. Now you have to get past the whole Zezimi name. I know that bothers a lot of people. For me, I don't sweat little things like that. It doesn't bother me. I know most people that are going to look at this watch are muggles, and they're probably not even going to notice the name unless they ask me. But a solid watch out of the box. And let me pull up my notes just to give you guys some price range for an idea of the Sesame 250, okay? So we went from 175 to 2 and change to 250. Solid deal, in my opinion. And I believe this one is also, if I'm not mistaken, a 21 size. I may be wrong on that, but beads of rice bracelet on here. No quick release here. You know, you're gonna have the security class. Now, does this security class also have that? That also has the pump out. So 90% of the time I see this pump out. I'm not sure why the flute was loose on that, but signed crown, done well. Dial looks great. On the actual website, I don't know if they changed this. I'm actually on their website now. Let me just check. But on the website itself, it does look a little bit of a white tone as I'm displaying this to you guys, and you guys can color contrast the hands to the dial. It's definitely a silver brushing up and down. Still a beautiful watch, but from the website, if you're expecting a white dial, you're not getting that. So I want to make sure to state that. But otherwise, they included a leather strap with this included in the purchase from their website directly. You can get this on AliExpress, but I don't think that that will include the additional strap. But on the website directly, it's $250. You get an extra strap in here. This actually has also, instead of an NH35, it's that Epson, the YN55A, right? Tying into that Bambino. Very reliable movement. I think that that is the Orient version of the movement that they outsource and let people buy on their own and everything else of the like. So otherwise, this does give me a vintage vibes. Again, with the cathedral hands, the simple setup. I like the 6 o'clock date wheel aperture on there. Again, it's not going to be, what do you call that? Trim lining on it. It's just going to be that. But I think the black does match well, just like how I showed you with my pole router and why I went with a black date wheel on this. So also another solid option. It has been compared to the Alpinist. That's up to you to say. Especially they have a dial color on here that's actually a green tone dial. Let me see if I could show you guys real quick. Might as well, right? So here we go. On here, that's the one that they often relate to the Alpinist, if you will. Your choice if you want to go that route, right? The Alpinist, the true Alpinist, now being discontinued for the SARB 017, and or you can go with the new iteration that they have in the Pro Specs model, which I believe is around 7 and change. It's up to you, man. If you're a homage, clomage type of person, you have options. They are out there, and of course, you know I like to indulge in them. It is what it is, and I love the affordability. Trap Vision 3D is in the building. Thank you for taking the time to check your boy out to make sure I'm on my P's and Q's. Who else have we got in here? Did I miss anybody? Did I miss a chat? I prefer vintage watches, but I would say that the modern vintage-inspired ones are going to be better for most folks. Ones like the Datematic or the Islander Port Jefferson come into mind. Yeah, dude, and I have the Port Jefferson. I have this on... I just showed a naked wrist. I have the Datematic on loaner. I can say both are exquisite options. The Port Jefferson, as you guys know, I'm fully indulging in that. That was one of my better purchases for 2024. And I love that you're confirming, Paul, that this is a great watch, because I feel like people by now are like, you're just selling watch. Matter of fact, Trap Vision is on here. He thinks I'm out here just selling watches. I'm not, man. I'm reporting the news. If you so happen to take a credit card out while you're watching this live, I have no control over that. Buyer be at your own mindset when actually making a decision. Please don't come on here and just make your decisions off of me. That's my disclaimer. You see what I'm doing there? Definitely one of the higher scale. Now, the Port Jefferson runs with the Miyota, whether it be their true Traveler GMT version, which is the one that I got. I got the ISL 245. I think that one has the nicest dial. They have that in a version of a Skin Diver, where it's just a 3-hander. Also a Miyota movement. Fantastic watch, man. He makes fantastic watches. I absolutely love the one that I got, and I think that anyone would be happy with either that or this. Right now, and I'm sorry, it's gonna sound like a salesman pitch. This is at a good price, guys. Let me pull up the website. I believe I mentioned it. I know I mentioned it earlier, but you know, I don't want you guys to miss the boat. Listen, sales come and go, right? If you don't and you're not ready right now and it's not responsible, don't do it. But at $656 for a Swiss-made movement and all the detail characteristics that a nerd would want, this is the move. If not, if you want to go with a Japanese movement, if you want to go with something with more color and vibrance to it, The Islander, like my man mentioned, is also a great option, and I think his is floating around 5 and change for the GMT, and I want to say 4 and change for the three-hander. Just, you know, reference that if you are interested in either. Yeah, I borrowed the standard port Jeff and the GMT from the Islander during 2023. Wait, I borrowed. Okay, 2023 and this year, love them both. Yeah, they're both fantastic. And the only difference, I believe, aside from the obvious of the GMT hand, but I believe that the three-hander is just slightly thinner. But then again, I was a little nervous about getting the GMT. That was the only one available, and I really wanted the language design. And I'm actually happy that I got the True Traveler GMT because it was my first True Traveler GMT, and it wasn't thick to the point where I was uncomfortable. I still feel like it's pretty thin. I think the difference between the two is almost not worth the conversation, in my opinion. It's not like it's like 2 or 3 millimeters thicker, if you will. Did I miss any chat? Hold on, I prefer the video, but a lot of folks. Yeah, so going back to what you said, Paul, a lot of folks are going to be okay with the vintage inspired watches for affordability, for like the lack of the amount of homework that you have to do on them. They're just a lot more accessible and easier to go with, and you can have a lot of fun with them, especially if you build one on your own, like I showed you guys before. Yeah, the standard three-hander is a little thinner, but both are great though. Exactly. My thoughts exactly. So where do we go from here, ladies and gentlemen? Where do we go from here? Sesame was 250. The Bambino was 2 and change, 210. That's the version 2, so 210. The 1963 was 175. Now be careful when I'm going to say this again, be careful when you're buying this on AliExpress. There's a lot of Fugazis and Fugats out there. It should be a mechanical. It should be the ST. You could kind of tell by the volume of people purchasing and making sure that they got good comments and everything else. But a fantastic watch for mechanical, vintage inspiration. That's a chronograph. Super affordable, and the movement is going to be harder to source. So we might see a lot of these homage, clomages going away moving forward. Might. Where do we go from here? I'll tell you where we go from here. We're going to the Alpine, right? The Namoki Alpine, not the Alpinist, not the Seiko Alpinist. I've done a review on this already. We did a comparison to this watch versus the Prospex version, right? Because I did put it out there that I was looking to do a comparison video. I didn't feel comfortable taking somebody's SARB 017. It's more expensive, but more so than that, it's harder to source. And once it's gone, it's kind of gone because you can only buy it used, I believe. And or if you can buy it new, the watch can sometimes go to $1,400. So instead, I did a comparison to the Moki Alpine versus the Alpinist SPB 121. That's probably not it, but you guys know what I'm talking about. It has a Cyclops on it. That's my only gripe, I would say, for the actual Seiko. But listen, here's the deal, man. These are the ways that I feel comfortable collecting. If you say to yourself, Skylar, and I'll tell you guys right now, this is about 4 and change by the time you're done with it, with a bracelet. I think it's 3 and change if you just get the case and the movement and the hands and everything else. You're floating closer to $400 if you get the bracelet, which I do recommend always, Namoki's bracelet. If that is not your move, and I had a lot of people tell me for a couple $100 more, you can get the real thing, cool. Stick to that program. Don't change. Don't let me convince you out of that. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I am trying to give access to more watches to people who don't want to stretch the dollar or can't stretch the dollar, right? I can absolutely wait and get the real thing, but I was okay. In fact, I was super excited to make this build. When they came out with this, I've never been thirsty before because, it's funny because I want some water. I've never been thirsty before for watches, okay? What do I mean by that? I never begged somebody to look at their watches, to do a review. I put the option out there. If you want to do it, cool. Let's collab. Let's make the most of it. Let's have some fun. Let's let's get some eyes on your watch, right? But when they came out with this, and they just had sent me a one to build prior to that, I was like, I really want to build that watch. Would you mind? Do you have it within budget? Do you want to? So the only thing about it is that I'm building the watch, so it couldn't be a situation where I asked them to borrow it. So it had to be an ask, right? Or I could have purchased it myself. But to be honest with you, to purchase a watch just to play around with it for one video or a couple of videos, because I always show my watches, it doesn't make sense for me. But the point is this, I was super excited because this is the one that got away. And it still got away because I don't have the actual SARB 017. Skylar, show us the watch. Stop flailing it around. Namoki has come out with the Alpine, aka the Alpinist homage, clomage at this point for sure. There are subtle differences to the actual one. The dial colorway is a little off, so you can tell from that. The most obvious thing is the applied logo at the 12. But this is a watch kit that you do purchase and put together yourself. This, the actual original one, the Saab 017, is where I fell in love with the cathedral style hands. And it's actually, if you guys notice my logo, it's where I drew inspiration to build my own watch from it, which was supposed to be the head nod to the Alpinist, the Saab 017. And it looks, my version of my bronze is completely different. That's an actual homage, not a clomage. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is definitely a clomage to it. Now, you can save some money up and get the actual Prospex one at this point. But if you venture to build your own, this one was a lot of fun to do so. The internal bezel does rotate just like the regular one. No issues with that. The crown is also screwed down. It is nicely finished, as you guys can see on here. I mean, the watch is just well made all around altogether, right? And again, I went with the date wheel that is actually black to match that rotating chapter ring. It functions just like how the other one would. The bracelet is very nice. That gives me heavy vintage inspiration vibes. You guys know that stretchy kind of bracelet? That doesn't do that here, but it gives that look, and it doesn't pull. I don't have a lot of hair on my arm, but it doesn't pull for me at all. Sterile case back here. And I don't know if you guys can see it from here. I don't know if it's visible, but there are screws here. There you go. See that screw where my thumb is? Right over here. That's how they achieve that rotating bezel in the inside being adhered to the inside of the case. So this was super fun to build. You guys can watch my video of me building it, and then you could watch my video of me doing a deep dive comparison to the one that's available for purchase from Seiko itself. So I had a lot of fun with this. I thought it was well done. I like the little automatic there, applied indices, applied logo. It's just done very, very well. And they basically just copied off of it. Now, I laughed even in my my build video. I think it was, no, the comparison video, right? Because a lot of people are going to say, well, buy the real thing. The movement in here is an NH movement. Who makes NH movement? Seiko. You know what I'm saying? They're supplying the homage and the clomage to the company in some sense. So if Seiko really wasn't okay with that, they would say, hey, you can't buy our movements because it's just for us, and then everything else on that. Now, you can't protect design language, as we probably already know by now, and we shouldn't be going for fakes at all. We don't go for fakes on here. There's obviously no reason to do so. If you can buy an actual homage or clomage, why do that? But again, about $400 is what you're going to pay to get that. I was super excited because I loved the way that the Saab 017 was constructed. And I believe, I may be mistaken, maybe somebody corrected me on this, but I believe on the original Saab 017, it didn't have the Cyclops, right? I think. I might be wrong. But I know that they have it on the new Prospex one, which, no big deal. It's really easy to remove a Cyclops, guys. You have to heat it up a little bit, and then you just can get it removed. There's plenty of videos on that, so don't let that stop you. If you don't like it, like how I don't too. But now, vintage, right? We're talking about vintage here. How does this tie in? Vintage, at least the start of vintage, is what, like 20, 30 years? I want to say 30 years, right? I believe that this watch design, when it was first released, is of that nature, just like the SKX 007 is. But again, there's a huge difference between a vintage inspired like this and, like, let's say a pole router, right? Something that's much older. And it doesn't have to be a clomage. It could be its own design and still feel very vintage and give you that kind of aspiration and feel that need, right? But for me, I kind of feel like this was vintage enough for me. It's the one that got away. So even if it's not, if you're saying to me, Skylar, that's not vintage, it is still special enough for me to want to show it to you guys because I was super excited to make this build. And I'm really happy about it. It's the one that got away, but I kind of got it, if you will. So where do we go from here, ladies and gentlemen? Let me catch up on the chat. I do apologize. Hang on. I caught the future YouTube. I caught the future of YouTube. This guy, stop it. I'll stop. Hold on, I almost closed the whole program. You're the leader of the new school, bro. Oh, man. Bro, my head's not going to fit in this vehicle. I need you to stop now. Yeah, I borrowed the standard. Okay, I read that. Look at the professionalism. I need to incorporate a disclaimer like this guy. I'm slacking. Yo, and I just watched a video from my man Father and Son. I love that channel. He does watch talk with his younger son. We often talk about getting the younger and the youth into it. And he did his last video in the car. So I was like, yes, sir. No distractions. You could be as loud as you want to be. The acoustic level is good. It is what it is, man. I love doing these videos in the car. This is how I might be putting some people onto it. You know what I mean? I loved it, man. I smiled like how I'm smiling now from ear to ear. I like the GMT enough that I bought it from the Islander during my testing and reviewing process. Fire. Oh, wait a minute. So, Paul, are you also a content creator of watches? Is that what you're saying? Or testing and reviewing process of just like your personal? I'm stealing your code name. Call for more information. What do you mean? You're stealing my code name? Call for more information. I need you to elaborate. I'm a bit late, but I'm stoked to be here. Michael, welcome in, bro. You're never late, bro. You're just fashionably late to the party. You've given so much value to when I do these lives, brother, so you can step in whenever the hell you feel like it, and I'm more than happy to have you in here, sir. I still haven't even worn my Alpine. Naughty boy. Naughty boy. But I can tell you why you haven't. It's because your wrist is constantly occupied with a fantastic tool watch that came out in 2024. It's going to make some groundbreaking rules in 2025. You're going to show up to watch shows. You're going to sell the heck out of that watch. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, Noctua Watch Corp has come out with a brand new independent brand. I always hate saying it like that. Brand new independent brand. I got to lose the brand somewhere. A new independent brand. His watches, man, if you're a toolish kind of guy, or if you're not handy and you want to look like a tool guy, not look like a tool, look like you're handy. That's what I'm trying to say. That's the watch for you. Check out Noctua Watch Corp, man. 2025, he's gonna be shaking and baking, and he's got a lot of experience, guys. You guys are buying a watch from somebody who's probably put together 1,000 watches. Not 1,000 watches, but he's probably... JP, you're in the chat. How many watches would you say you put together, brother? Let the people know. Let the people know. So he knows what he's doing. His parts, much like parts that I've recognized of higher caliber from other companies, I was super impressed, man. Super impressed. And yes, I can make this live about you just in the drop of a hat. They're saying, Skylar, this is supposed to be about vintage. Well, I only have one more to show you, so I've got to fill in the fillers where I can. But yeah, man, check it out, man. Fantastic. Paul, yes, Guy, I'm writing a review for a website. Nice. So, Paul, I don't know if you're on Watch Crunch. If you aren't, make an account. And send me the information that your website is going, man. I'd love to take a look at it. I'd love to let people know of your hard work, of your reviews. Some people like to read the reviews rather than watch videos, believe it or not, right? And or they like to have both to have an elaboration. Some people feel that people who are taking the time to write something down for a review is really investing themselves in making sure that they comb through all the finer details, yeah? So what I can do, Paul, is if we ever tackle the same demon, I can list your website in my description and say, hey, after you guys watch the review, you see all the nice angles, the close-ups, maybe you see my pretty face, maybe you don't, but my man Paul also did an in-depth review to his website, so check it out if you want to have some literature on somebody who does a breakdown for it. Fair enough. I'll DM you on Watch Crunch. I think you liked one of my wrist checks from earlier today. Yes, sir. You know what I mean? Captain Crunch over here. Oh, I can't say that. That's Maximus. That's Maximus. The mayor of Whoville? Can I say that? Yeah, DM me, bro, for sure. We all got to stick together, bro. This is a small community. This is a niche community. And if you are on this channel and you do any kind of watch content, please hit me up. Let me know what you're doing. I get involved with many different people of the like. People who now, like my man Paul, do reviews for websites. I get in touch with people who do watch events, right? When they send around watches around the world for reviewers like yourself, Paul. Maybe you want to get involved with that, contact Ben and Watch. But he gets in contact with independent brands and he offers an event where he sends a watch from that company to different people who do reviews or just somebody who he can entrust. And they give feedback on the watch, and the watch actually gets donated to a charitable fund at the end. So I definitely wanted to sink my teeth into something like that. That's awesome. Yeah, man, we're a small community, and I want us to all stick together and vibe out and help each other out. My favorite watch from Mock, welcome in. My favorite watch, I'm gonna get back to you on that. That's heavy. Guys, the next one, and I will get back to that, my favorite watch. My favorite watch of all time, like, see, there's different ways that I could slice that, right? There's different ways that I could peel the layers back on that, because there's a difference if you tell me if you could only grab one watch from your apartment and that's the only watch that's valuable to you, for whatever reason you had to skate off. I don't even want to put the words out there why I would have to do that. But if you're asking me what's your one watch that you would have to salvage versus what would be the one watch that you can either purchase or you have purchased that you're in love with versus forgetting about the one that is tied deeply to your heartstrings, there's a different answer for that. He says, incoming call, I'll catch up to you later. No problem, Trap. You're a busy man. I'm surprised the mayor was able to even come in here and give me some time. I appreciate it. So, for my last act, the Floose. Ah, man, he's always showing this watch. Yeah, baby, I'm showing it because it's valid, man. The Floose is loose, the Blanc Pond type of vibe. I mean, hello. It has very nice. Now, some people have said that they don't gravitate towards the colorway that they use for the different iterations to this. However, I've always been in love with the Blanc Pond type of feel. And when we're talking about a homage, whatever you want to call it, they have made a solid watch. Now, this one's going to push the barriers a little bit. I believe this one is $450. Matter of fact, let me check my notes. But at the end of the day, this watch has impressed me heavily. We are currently working on a review video of this. This is the 145th limited edition, and just trying to look at the price. $450 USD. This is a limited run, so if you do like this color or the other colorways, as a matter of fact, as I'm on the website, I see a couple of them crossed out. I think there's only now 1, 2, 3, 4 colors available, but it hits right at home for that Blanc Pond type of feel. And the biggest thing that gives you that is, for me, this bezel insert, right? That kind of bubbly thing. Now, you can achieve that on any watch that you want if that's the biggest thing that you're drawn to it. And an example of that, look at my other lives that I've done. Last thing I did to my SKX 009 J1 is put in a bezel insert that has the same type of flow. And it did give me more of a vintage vibe, fitting into its actual calibration of being a vintage watch. I'm making up words. So if that's the only thing that you draw from it, yeah, you don't have to go this route. But if you do want to go this route because you don't like to meddle with bezels, then this is the way to go, in my opinion. Now, I did win this in a watch meetup. So maybe that takes away a couple of points for me advertising it to you guys. Like, oh, well, you didn't pay for it, Skylar. I hear you, but I've paid for many watches that are within the same price range of this. I do have this on hand. I am doing a deep dive into this. It's not out yet. That's one of my next videos to come, but I do want to showcase it because it is another example of a homage vintage style watch. The colorways are plentiful. You have some vibrant colors within this iteration. This one in particular, it's funny because I won this one and I like this one the best as out of all the colorways, so it worked out. Now, they give you a FKM strap on this, and they also give you a, I think it's a beads of rice bracelet. The beads of rice bracelet, I didn't do my talking practice before the live, so I'm jumbling up. But they give you 2 bracelets, much like the Zezimi, yeah? The FKM is very, very supple. The only critique that I gave was on these traveling keepers, and it's not exclusive to this strap. I find this a lot on many of the FKM straps or any of the straps of the like that have traveling keepers. I like when the traveling keepers have the little bump out on the bottom of them over here, where it kind of hooks into where you want it to stay, right? And I find that problem to be amongst many different straps. That's one of the things that I would say for an FKM, any kind of rubber strap. We do get quick release here, so that is nice. I have nothing else to say to it. The lugs are kind of a little bit long, so it'd be nice to get this a little closer. We're nitpicking. The tolerances for the bezel this is a little stiff, yeah? It does need a little bit of love to turn, but other than that, you guys can hear. Let me give you guys an audio for that. It is very crunchy. Hang on. Okay, so it is crunchy enough. It does give a nice audio feedback. It is a little bit tough to turn. Some people like that, right? Some people say, hey, because here's the deal. when it's very easy to turn, I don't know if this happens to you guys, but like when I go out in my day and I put my diver on, it's always like somehow, some way, when it doesn't have enough tolerance, when it goes to the left-hand turn, it ends up like this. And I'm like, how did that happen? And you got to go around, you do it again. An hour later, it's like this. And you're like, wait a minute, what's going on? So that's that. But zero backplay once it's into the spot. So that was the only thing that I had to say about it. You guys will hear more from it when I do my in-depth review. There were a couple of things that I really wanted to dive into, especially on the bracelet of this. The bracelet for this, again, I'm sorry, and I don't have it to show you. You'll see it in the review, but I believe it's a beads of rice. There were slight improvements for that. It was a decent bracelet overall. It wasn't jangly. So for $450, you get a nice build. It has the line in the middle to give it more of that vintage inspiration. Again, going back to the Markwell, we have that kind of crosshair kind of look. I like that. I like that, especially when something's trying to achieve a vintage vibe. I think it is bold also because you can really get up on the dial and make sure everything is lined up perfectly. So you have to make sure you manufacture that properly if you're going to go that route. I think that they executed the loom on this pretty fair to be of vintage type of looking. I personally, and Paul, you're in the chat, I personally don't appreciate when the loom is supposed to look aged, but it's like a brighter yellow. It's like too colorful of a yellow. Like this looks like it's an actual patina effect on it. Maybe I'm going crazy. I haven't owned actual vintage watches myself, so maybe that I'm off the mark, but that is at least my perspective as of right now. So I think that they did a pretty good job in execution of this watch in general. And so, yeah, you'll hear more about the details on that later when I actually do the deep dive review, which is going to be coming soon. I've been taking a break. I've been doing a lot more lives. I love interacting with you guys, and I've chosen to give that more time and attention rather than doing reviews. We're still on pace, though. I do about once a week on reviews. Last week, we did the Erebus review, which I thought was pretty cool, if I must say so myself. Let's look at the chat, shall we? Okay, that's where I left off. Tank Louis Cartier is my pick. Yeah, man. Listen, when it comes to Cartier and it comes to the question of the tank and everything of the like, I'm not as well versed in high-end pieces, but I love having conversations with people that are, so I can increase my knowledge for it. And that is a watch that I hear very, very often in people's collection. Very elegant. The squares and rects don't work for my wrist. I've talked about in the past of me keeping watches that were given to me. I actually won a watch when I went to the show in Philly. I won the Vario Reversal. Exquisite watch. Beautiful. Awesome technology to having that switch over on the other side, being a dual-sided quartz movement. Wasn't my style whatsoever. I happened to go to the show with my brother-in-law. He is in love with that kind of language when it comes to designs and cases. So I told him, I said, bro, we'll both enter the raffle. If I win the watch, I'll do the review for it, but the watch is yours for you tagging along and to mark the occasion. He has a couple of watches in his watch collection. He's not a crazy enthusiast, but it was super special to say that, and then it actually happened, right? So then I was like, guess what, bro? You remember that raffle we went into? He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, you won. He's like, oh, snap. So that was pretty cool. But my point was this, like on my wrist, 7¼ inch wrist, just the way my wrist sits, I don't know what it is, but when it's on that smaller of a rectangle, I have some square watches, no problem, but when it's like that rectangle and it's kind of like thin, for me, it doesn't work on my wrist, but man, when I see people wrist it, sometimes I'm like, that's a gorgeous watch, no matter what the company is. I collect watches, but I'm new to the hobby. JP, you have come to the right place, my friend. Listen, and I'm not end-all be-all. Trap Vision 3D, Wristful Ignorance. There's a bunch of channels that if you watch my other lives, I'll mention. There's a bunch of people that you can follow and watch. I would have to say, I'm not going to take anything away from any channel. I don't know what you gravitate the most. If you gravitate the most to my content, then most likely you will like Trap Vision 3D. But if you're new to watch content, I always like to include starting points to more advanced stuff. Everything is my opinion, my friend. You can start off with an expensive $10,000 watch. And if you are blessed enough to start there, absolutely have at it. However, if you can't, I at least give you the options. Now, I don't go all the way up to $10,000 because I don't want to put that much money in it. There's a difference between not being able to afford it. If I didn't buy as many watches as I did, I could probably afford a $10,000 to $15,000 watch, maybe a couple of times. However, I've chosen to go the route to be able to enjoy many different styles and spread my money out a little bit more, and then take the remaining balance and invest it. Anyway, like, I don't know anything about the watches movements, I think you meant. I go by the looks of the watches. I got a good taste of good watches, though. Yeah, way to pat yourself in the back, bro. You're where everybody pretty much started, right? Because outside of the wizardry and when the muggles are around and they're not into watch collecting and they're not super nerdy like this, it's not the topic of discussion when it comes to timepieces. Therefore, you're in the journey of searching knowledge, and YouTube is an incredible way to learn about watches whilst being entertained. I personally cannot read a book. I fall asleep after probably the first 2 sentences. Once I have to reread a sentence, I'm done for. So YouTube has become a phenomenal platform for us to all congregate and talk watches of the like. So if you're beginning in your collection and you feel like there's a lot of shiny things that you're interested in because of the design language, number one, here's the deal. Watches are not necessary. And by that, I mean watches, you don't need a watch to tell the time anymore. Who doesn't have a smartphone by now, right? I've got the time on my dashboard. I have 2 phones. The time is there. So what's that left with? That's left with the appreciation of the way the watch is conformed, right? Or, once you get nerdier, what is into the watch in the specification details, right? I talked about Erebus being a spec monster, knowing exactly what crazy enthusiasts like to go after. I would say this to you, JP. If I was talking to myself when I first started, I wanted everything. I probably started buying 15, 20 watches off the first year, okay? They were all super affordable. Here's the deal. If I was talking to the old me, even though I hit the mark pretty well, and I barely regret any watch in my collection, slow it down, take some time. See what you like about the watch outside of the way it looks. Because what you're going to learn and discover is that whatever you really liked about a particular watch that was pushing you to pull the trigger very quickly, you'll find that same design language in another watch, and then it'll have something else that you'll appreciate as well, whether that be another design thing inside of it, right? Let me give you an example. Let's say you like Sunburst. You're like, oh, Sunburst. I ain't never seen nothing like that before. That watch is fire. And it's a diver. I don't have too many divers. I need that. You'll come to find that there's a lot of dive watches that have sunburst and some things that are different from each one. Like I talked about the date wheel aperture being color matched to the dial. Some will have it, some won't. It'll be a sunburst, but not everyone will have that date wheel matching. Not everyone will have a different caliber of movement or have a bracelet that's a little bit better. So there is a lot of things that you're probably going to be impressed with in the beginning that will carry over to something else that would be a better option for you, even in more recent times. I'm not going to regret something that I bought 4 years ago that impressed me, because at the time it was super impressive, right? But if I get impressed and I get that feeling of, damn, that watch has also something else that was similar to the one that I had my eyes set on 6 months later, then you're going to feel that. You know what I mean? So in the beginning, slow down, absorb, make connections to other enthusiasts that you can pick their mind from. That's another thing I would say. I like your choice. Mock Champion, the tank is awesome. Yes, I like that choice too. Well, faux patina tends to look better than actual patina. Haha, ha. Actual old patina is generally not very even. My tag 1500 diver is patinaed and it's not super even. That makes sense, right? Because here's the deal with lume, that's actual luminescent paint applied on there. And how powerful that lume is going to be and how long it lasts overnight is dependent on how much material they actually applied. What that means is over time, through UV rays, through oxygenation, right? Believe it or not, you're still getting oxygen in your watch, even if it's a screw down crown. Over time, that's going to break down, right? That's going to slowly just not be there, right? Not only is it going to change color, but it's also, you'll see it a lot, right? On actual vintage watches that some of it is completely gone. And so you're going to have an uneven amount of coating just depending on the nature of the beast, right? There's no rhyme or reason. I'm sure it's pretty even when they apply it originally. Just one part might be hit more than the other, or one was a little bit off on layers. And the actual patina, to what Paul was alluding to, is looks completely different when it actually fades. So when it's actually a faux patina, it looks nicer because at least the coating is even on it. So that is a very good insight that you gave, Paul. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, I think that is all that I have here for you today. We are over the hour. I do apologize, but I do appreciate you guys for spending your most valuable asset, which is time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. I don't know if I'm going to have another live before the new year is over, so I want to say Happy New Year. I want to tell you guys thank you so much for your support. I do appreciate you guys tuning in from a week-to-week basis. This is a lot of fun for me. I will be working on reviews on my other lives. I've mentioned what I'm going to do with the channel moving forward for 2025. We got a lot in store. We have a lot of relationships that we have to unpack, and a lot of reviews coming to you guys soon. So thank you so much for tuning in on the stream, and I'll say it another time because it's very important that I recognize how important you're spending your most valuable asset, which is time. I'll see you guys real soon, man. This was a lot of fun. Take care and have a wonderful day.